And yeah, hey Neil, thank you for joining me for this final CAKEPOPS interview,
Um,
which is sorry.
oh no, I was just going to say that I'm honored
Oh, okay.
to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's meant to be, yeah, just a deep dive into everything Neil Brideau, specifically around Radiator Comics as a distributor, as well as your involvement with sort of community building, both in Chicago and in Miami as well. So I guess before we dive too deep into that, I guess, can you tell us a little bit about your connection with Chicago and Cake specifically?
Sure. So I moved to Chicago in 2003 from Albany, New York. And pretty much as soon as I moved there, I started shopping at Quimby's bookstore, which, as people in Chicago know, is full of wonderful self-published comics. And I really fell in love with tiny photocopied mini comics. They fit my budget at the time, and they also kind of I had been making comics for myself for a while, but I definitely seeing those comics at Quimby's made me understand that I could make my own comics as well. And Quimby's has an open consignment policy where anyone who's self-publishing anything anywhere can sell their work at the store. And so I knew when I finally started self-publishing my own stuff, which took me a few years before I got up the confidence to do that, that I had that venue of Quimby's. And so I was making comics, and then in 2009, Quimby's posted that they were hiring, and I applied, and I got the job. So I was hired along with Edie Fake as a new set of employees at the store, working with Liz Mason, who's an amazing manager and the real heart and soul of the store. And in the fall of 2009, shortly after I started working at Quimby's, some friends of mine and I went up to the Milwaukee Zine Fest, and when we were leaving, one of the organizers of the Milwaukee Zine Fest asked us when there would be a Chicago Zine Fest. And that kind of, we just on the drive home, we as a group decided that the four of us would organize a Chicago Zine Fest. And we did that, and we started organizing the Zine Fest, and that was a lot of fun. And Chicago is the home to so many amazing cartoonists, has a long history of really fantastic comics coming out of it. And there's always this conversation swirling around of why doesn't Chicago have a comics festival similar to, at the time, MoCA in New York City, or the Stumptown Comics Fest in Portland, or SPX in Bethesda, or APE in San Francisco, or TCAF in Toronto. And sort of the difference between the zinesters and the comics artists was that the zinesters they would sort of be well, there should be a zine fest, so let's make a zine fest. And then with the cartoonists, the conversation always went, there should be a comics festival here. I sure can't wait till somebody else does that. And I was having all these conversations with a number of people who wanted to, maybe play a small part in getting a comics festival off the ground. And finally, conversations between me and Edie while we were working led to us just getting a group of cartoonists together to meet at Quimby's after we closed one night, and just get the ball rolling on let's get this, let's make a comics festival. And it was sort of this open group for a little while, and then finally we decided if we were actually going to like make an event happen, that we would have like a core group of organizers. So 5 people got together and committed to actually like organizing the festival. And that was me and Edie Fake, Grace Tran, Max Morris, and Jeff Zwirik, with like the original like 5 like core organizers. And that's sort of how Cake came to be. And one of the things that I find really exciting about like Cake now is that none of the original organizers are organizers anymore, that it's like been handed over to like several new folks. And so that I think that speaks to like sort of like the community's like ownership of Cake, rather than it being like a person's festival.
Yeah, and even some of the newer organizers have already left as well. So it's been cycling through them, and hopefully it will keep on going for years to come.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's how I met you, right? So like you were running the volunteer services, and I just remember being super excited to help out with Cake after going that first year and being like, oh man, I really wish I could be a part of this. And there was the open call, and then one thing led to another. And one year you're like, hey, Chris, I see you around every year. Do you want to do some more? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah, I feel like you organized you volunteered from like the first year on, right? And then
not the very first year, but I attended.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I didn't hear about it early enough, but I did find out and was super excited about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I really love the fact that you went from like just like donating, a handful of hours on like the weekend itself, or like putting up posters like a few weeks beforehand, to like really diving in and devoting a lot of time to making Cake happen.
Yeah, it's been really rewarding, and everyone like that I talked to is just super excited to hear more news about Cake. And so although we're sad that it didn't happen physically in 2021, we're hoping these video shorts will keep Cake in people's minds and keep them excited for next year, because we're looking forward to it.
And I don't want to like put any words in the like current organizers' mouths, but I assume anybody who's like watching this who is like, hey, I want to be involved, is like welcome to get in touch and like
yes,
devote at whatever level of time commitment that they can.
Yeah, I mean, they can always email us at cake@cakechicago.com or volunteers@cakechicago.com. Let us know. Yeah, we're definitely eager to hear from the community. Thanks for that plug, Neil.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So eventually, while you were here in Chicago, you started Radiator Comics, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what Radiator is, and then kind of generally like what a comics distributor does, like specifically in terms of like indie and alternative comics.
Yeah. So Radiator Comics distributes self-published and small press comic books. And so what that entails is basically people who are making their own comics send me copies of their comics. I put them up on the Radiator Comics website, and then I promote them through our newsletter and through social media, and I contact stores to tell them that the comics are available through them. And so individuals and stores and educational institutions can order stuff from Radiator Comics. I pack them up and I send them out. I do a consignment system similar to Quimby's, where I pay the artists after the comics sell. I do that because that's the only way that I can afford to do it. I can't buy comics outright. But if I'm given the money, like for a comic, I can like take the portion that is dedicated to that artist and pay that artist that money. So that kind of came into being because of Quimby's and because of Cake and Zine Fest. I learned a lot from Liz at Quimby's, and I learned working at Quimby's and like dealing with consignment, like interacting with a lot of artists who were interested in getting their work sold at Quimby's, and seeing their reaction to like learning that they could sell their work there, and then also seeing their reaction when they checked back in to find out that people actually like bought their comics. Just the reaction that they had, the how good it felt for them, like definitely like rubbed off on me. And then also like organizing Cake, like putting in a lot of work to build this sort of like infrastructure for this event to happen. And then on the weekends, seeing like so many people having such a good time around something that we were all passionate about, comics, that like just that feeling is really great. So I felt like I was like in a good position, both in terms of like what I had learned at Quimby's, and then also like what I had like realized my like passions were related to like small press comics, that distributing people's comics, like telling other people why specific comics are so good and like why they should read them, was like a good place to put my energy. And you know, there are a number of other people who are distributing comics like Radiator does, and folks like John Porcellino from Spit and a Half and JT Yost from Birdcage Bottom Books like gave me a lot of advice when I was starting out, and that was super helpful. But I think just like organizers at comics festivals, every distributor that I talk to wishes that there were more distros out there, you know, sort of like carrying that load of trying to get people's comics into other people's hands.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. Do you have like I guess like a shared list of like cool shops that will carry like indie books and stuff that you all share?
Yeah, we've definitely like shared lists. Avi from Silver Sprocket like shared like a huge spreadsheet that they collected from several sources. A lot of distributors and like small press publishers have like a list of shops on their websites of like where they sell their stuff, as a way both to like support those shops that are buying from them, but then also so that like anybody can like look at that list on like Radiator's site or on like the like John Porcellino's site and see like what the indie or small press friendly shops are around the country. And I would encourage anybody to go and steal that list and contact those shops if you're into like contacting shops.
Okay.
Carry your work.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea, especially if the shops are near you. I mean, go check them out. And so you had mentioned that you have like an open consignment policy. So I guess anyone could just go in and submit you know, a form to you and send some copies.
Well, so no, we don't have an open consignment policy.
Okay.
It's not exactly like Quimby's.
Gotcha.
Just because it's like I'm one person. It does take a lot of work, and so I do have to like pick and choose like what is distributed through Radiator Comics. But I also recognize that I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of what is out there. So I definitely I'm totally down with like people contacting me and being like, here are my comics. And I try really hard to like get back in touch with folks to let them know whether or not I can carry their stuff. I'm working on a redesign of the website right now. And hopefully once that launches, there will be like some submission information on there of how people can submit their comics for consideration.
Okay, so more of an open submission policy. Sorry if I misspoke.
No, that's fine. And that should, by the time that this video posts, it should be up.
Oh, fantastic. So how do you stay like on the lookout for folks making cool new stuff and how to notice people?
It's tough.
Yeah.
Going to comics festivals is a great way to see what people are making. Or, if you can't go to the comics festival, like I love going through the exhibitor list when comics festivals post them and like clicking on as many links as possible and just like seeing what's out there. I try to follow things on social media. I oftentimes with the artists whose work I do distribute, when I send them like, their quarterly payout, I'll often like put a little thing that's like, if you know anybody who I should be distributing, let me know. And I've definitely seen some really great folks that way. But I think that is definitely a challenge, is like knowing like who's out there, who's making stuff. And yeah, I'm constantly like, whenever lists come up of like artists, I'm on the lookout. I browse through them for sure.
Cool. So eventually, I guess all good things have to come to an end, and you wound up leaving Chicago. And funnily enough, you wound up in my hometown of Miami.
Yeah.
Taking Radiator with you. So how did you find the comic scene when you first arrived in Miami? Did you know like who to look out for, who to get in touch with when you arrived?
I didn't. There were a couple people who I knew, like you and Rob Clow, who had like grown up in Miami. And some folks that I talked to were like, oh, there's nothing going on in Miami. There's nobody in Miami. I reached out to Jared Rosello, who grew up in Miami, who lives in Tampa. And the picture that was painted for me by a number of people was kind of like, yeah, you might be kind of lonely there. So I moved in August of 2017, and in November of that year, there's an annual festival here called SPF, the Small Press Fair, which also has a convenient pun in it, in that SPF is like the rating for sunscreen. So all of
protection factor or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Yeah.
So their artwork always has to do with like the SPF and then the year number. So we're up to SPF 21 this year. So it's a zine fair. It's like this combination zine fair and like printmaking fair that takes place in Fort Lauderdale. And I signed up for a table there, and that was my first interaction with people who were self-publishing their stuff in South Florida. And it was really exciting. I met a number of people who were making comics, and pretty much all of them were like, oh yeah, I know like one other person who's making comics in South Florida. And the more people I talked to, the more I realized that like these were different one other persons that people knew. And so I think there are a number of, there are actually like, there are a bunch of people here who are making really awesome comics, and they just don't necessarily like know each other and like knew that each other were out here. So I kind of, one of the people that I met was Jamila Rouser, who's was up in Fort Lauderdale when we met, is now in Miami. And a Google alert for like Comics South Florida, brought up an interview with her and about her comic wash day. And I was like, oh, this is super cool. So I ordered some comics from her, and she emailed me and she's like, you're in Florida too? Are you into comics? Like, do you make comics? And so we became friends, and we decided that we should put together an anthology for Free Comic Book Day, which we named Sun and Sand Comic Anthology. And so it's co-published by Radiator Comics and by Jamila's publishing company, Black Jose Press. And we put the call out to folks to submit ideas for comics about South Florida. And we ended up with this like really cool 28-page comic with like 10 different comics by different comics artists. And we actually just earlier in May, we did a call for a second issue, which we're planning on putting out in November and December to be released concurrently with the Miami Book Fair and Miami Art Week. And we received like twice as many submissions as we had room for. So it's really exciting to see like the number of people in South Florida who are like making comics.
Yeah, that's really exciting. It seems like building community is just like something inherent to you, Neil, and very like special in sort of your interactions and wanting to get out and see people here and here and here, and you kind of like, you're like, oh, I should thread everyone together and kind of like start, you know, having something that's greater than the sum of its parts. Does that have anything to do with like just I guess related to like Radiator? Do you feel like you'd have more talent to choose from locally if you start bringing everyone together into a scene?
I mean, I do think that like when there's like a visible community, people feel more encouraged to get involved and might find people in that community to like, you know, either help them or encourage them to make comics. You know, I feel like a lot of the things that I do, like Radiator Comics or some of the organizing that I've done in South Florida, I mean, a lot of it is like just like wanting to celebrate comics that I dig, and so I think there is kind of like there's like a selfish aspect to it too, where it's just like, oh, I want more people to know about these fantastic comics and these fantastic cartoonists. So yeah. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
It does. Like, to me, it's like they're not necessarily like two different things, or they can be two different things. And like, you know, you've got Radiator, you want to distribute these cool comics, but at the same time, more comics is better for everyone, right? Like everyone just creating cool stuff, and just getting their ideas out there and seen by other people and just shared, and just going through the process of doing that is valuable. So yeah, that's really cool. And I know that one of the tools that you helped, or that helped you rather, in getting this sort of off the ground was winning the was it the Night Art Challenge, the grant from the James L. Knight Center. So like, how did you like hear about that? Although I know like that's like a name that you hear at the end of like every NPR story or whatever. It's like brought to you by. Did you know that they had like a specific arts grant out there?
Yes. So I mean, so like the Knight Foundation is based in Miami, and they have like a few cities that they focus on around the country, and Miami is one of them. And the Knight Challenge grant is specifically for artists and arts organizations to apply and basically like apply with an idea, and half of the funding comes from the Knight Foundation, and half of the funding you have to like come up with through other means. And the idea behind it, what they're thinking behind it is it like they're trying to get other folks to get new money into arts funding. And so this was like actually like a big thing that a lot of people were talking about down here. So a lot of arts organizations and artists that I knew were applying for the challenge grant. And I had the opportunity in 2019 to do some pop-up shops around Miami at a few art galleries, which was a lot of fun. And a couple of them asked me that like part of my time there would be to do like workshops or programming. So I organized some readings and some workshops at Exile Books and at Locust Projects. And I had a lot of fun with that, and it was really cool. There's actually one moment that like I think about a lot, in which at the end of one of the workshops, two people who had met each other at the workshop like sat down at a bench in like locust projects, and they were like showing each other their sketchbooks and like talking about like sort of like what they how they did things. And so they were learning from each other like in that moment, and it just like felt amazing to have like organized this thing in which people like were able to do that. Like they then like came together, and that's one of the things about, not to go on a tangent, but like one of the things that I really loved about organizing Cake was that like you put in so much work, right? Like, not to diminish the work that the organizers do, because it's a ton of work, but you put in all this work to like sort of like build this thing, be like, here's this like this structure that we have set up. These are the hours that this is going to take place. Here's where it's going to take place. We're going to like promote it. But then the real magic of something like Cake, it has nothing to do with like the like dozen people who like put the work into like put it together. It's all about like the people tabling and the people who are coming in and the people who are volunteering, right? It's like that's where the real magic is happening, is like the stuff that you have nothing to do with. And I felt like that was the same instance where it was like these two people like did not care that I was in the room. It was like they were like teaching each other, and so I really liked the idea of like, what if I proposed for the night funding just a studio like where people could come and work on their comics. We could do programming like workshops and readings and like film screenings, but then there would also be just drafting tables where people could come and like work on their comics during like open studio hours, that sort of thing. And they said yes. Like, much to my surprise, the Knight Foundation approved Radiator Comics Studio, and so I looked for spaces to rent, and I like settled on one, and like I was negotiating the like lease agreement, and I got the keys for the space, and then the next day, the day after I got the keys for the space, Miami shut down because of the pandemic, and so I had to like rework the Knight budget into like an online Radiator Comics Studio. So I turned it into like online panels and programming, and then also like an open studio thing where like every Friday I open up our Zoom and just people come and like work on their comics for 2 hours in like the telepresence of others. So yeah, that's the
So it seems like right at the sort of cusp of you like starting like in-person physical community stuff, the lockdown prevented any of that from happening.
Yes.
And so you, I guess, essentially just started and have been online community building in Miami. I guess not to sort of release any spoilers ahead of time, but are you planning to do any sort of physical community stuff going forward?
I don't know. I really enjoyed doing the online thing, and actually one of the things that has been a really like surprising and enjoyable thing is that like I tried like some of the programming that I scheduled, which was like a series called Nuts and Bolts, in which people who are connected to South Florida talk about their process for like penciling or inking or that sort of thing. Like I tried to like do some programming that was specifically like South Florida specific, but then things like the open studio and a social event that I host a couple times a month called Cartoonist Coffee, in which people just like get together to have like casual 15-minute conversations. Those have attracted people from like all over the country. And so like I've gotten like this group of like regulars who come to Open Studio from like Wisconsin and New York City and Oregon and like all over the country. And that's been really exciting. Like it's not necessarily, there are people from Miami who join in, but it's not like Miami specific, but it is still community building. And like they like one afternoon during Open Studio, like somebody was like, we need a Discord for this thing. And like, so we started a Discord, and that's been like a fun aspect where like people are posting opportunities that they see online, or like programming that they see is happening online, to let other people know that that's happening. Two of the folks who like have met like through Radiator Comics Studio met up in person in New York recently, and that was like really exciting to see. So yeah, the plan for like Radiator Comics Studio right now is to sort of like focus more on those like those more I guess like democratic sort of venues like Open Studio or like Cartoonist Coffee or the Discord, where like it's not a panel of people like talking about what they're doing. It's just like everybody sort of encouraging each other to like work on their comics and that sort of thing. So I don't know what like Miami specific things besides, so sort of concurrently with the Knight Foundation, I also received an Ellie's Award from Oolite Arts, which is a major arts organization in South Florida. And that money was specifically for funding of a comic arts journal that I named Spiny Orb Weaver, which is, as you know, a really adorable spider that exists, I guess, like all over the world, but does definitely exist here in South Florida.
See a lot of them in Miami.
I had never seen one before I came down here. So Spiny Orb Weaver is a zine about South Florida cartooning, in which we feature a new comic, 12-page comic by a cartoonist who lives in South Florida. And then I interview them, and then there are backup pages by cartoonists and other folks who have lived in South Florida who are connected to comics. Chris, you are in issue 2 with a really fantastic
full disclosure
comic.
Warning. Yeah, thank you.
About going to the beach. So we've put out 3 issues of that. And that was a lot of fun. And I'm hoping to do another 3 issues next year. So yeah, those are sort of the plans right now for Radiator Comics Studio. The online panels and that sort of thing. I think I'm done doing that sort of thing. Like pretty soon, you know, SPX and CXC and other like festivals are going to be doing some online programming. So I feel like I don't need to like keep doing that sort of thing.
Okay, cool. So I guess with like building community and getting people together, are there any secrets to getting it right, or what should people like avoid?
Don't wait to get it right, because
Okay.
you never will. I don't know, plan pretty far in advance. I think also like I think thinking on like a pretty like granular level too is like important. Sort of like when you're like thinking about like cake, you have to kind of be like, okay, people are gonna like walk in the doors of the venue. What do they do when they walk in the doors? And you have to like think about how like they're going to be navigating the space and that sort of thing. And then like that sort of like ripples out to like tons of questions about like what are the like, how are the cartoonists going to be standing behind their table? Like how, like, what are they going to be eating? Like, you know, what can we do to make things more helpful for them? That sort of thing. Yeah. And, you know, something, I don't know. I feel like I've lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's okay. I guess just building on that and something you had mentioned earlier about sort of the real magic happening when the cartoonists are interacting with each other. Definitely one of the cooler moments or behind the scene moments of Cake is like the Sunday morning when all the artists come in early and, you know, are setting up their tables and stuff, and they have a little extra time to kind of walk around each other's tables and like check people's stuff out and just like make new connections, because otherwise they're going to be behind their tables for most of the day. So that's a time they like really use to like get together and explore new stuff and just see, oh, hey, that looks cool. Let me go talk to this person. So yeah, I think that's phenomenal. And yeah, that's just one of the many sort of experiences that I love about organizing Cake.
For sure. Yeah, and I feel like so many of my like closest friendships, like within like the cartooning community, like started at comics festivals, or like you're just like you happen to be next to somebody, or like you do like come up to their table and you're like, oh, this is really cool, and then like you realize that you like have read their stuff for years, or you don't realize that and you trade with them, and then you like take it home, and then you love their comics and you email them, and then at the next festival you end up like getting dinner with them, that sort of thing.
Yeah, in your event for Spiny Orb We Were Number 3, there was a real sort of cute interaction between Jamila and Buttercup about having read each other's stuff, and then even after like seeing each other, still not realizing it until they like messaged each other later.
Yeah.
Cool. So will you be at the next SPF then?
The next SPF, yeah, I hope so. I don't think that they've announced anything yet, but if it's happening, I will totally be there. Yes.
Awesome. I think those are all the questions that I had. Did you have any questions for me?
I don't know. I'm excited for whenever Cake happens again.
Yeah.
I love coming and visiting, and
we're going to try our hardest to make it next year. Yeah, I guess around the time that we're recording, just about 1 year in the future. Some posts on Facebook came up of like, oh, time to start, setting up the venue again. Although next year should be a new venue, so new place, new space, and yeah, hopefully just as much fun.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it really is, and it's kind of cool. Looking forward to it because a lot of the jurying and exhibitor selection has already been done, and a lot of it is carrying forward from the people who so generously let us keep their tabling fees until they could join again. I'm sure there's going to be some mix up of some people who can't make it anymore, and we'll have to put some new people, but it will give us more time to dedicate to setting up the new space and figuring out the flow of people, and just kind of making it the best experience for everyone. So yeah, I'm really oddly in a way kind of grateful for that extra time to dedicate to that.
Yeah, I feel like it's been really great to see the way that people have like used responded to the challenges that the pandemic has had on all of us, and I hope that that it's a tool that we use to sort of rethink the way that we're doing things, and for some people, like having online programming is more accessible, and I think just sort of like celebrating the people who are like making comics is really important. And
yeah, I guess on a final note on the pandemic, and not to be too much of a bummer, but I think it's just important to recognize the privilege that we have right now in our low as in the beginning of the sort of outbreak kind of infection numbers again, thanks to vaccination and everyone being careful. So hopefully it's something that we can talk about in the past tense going forward.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Neil. So people can find you online at radiatorcomics.com.
Yes.
Perfect.
That is the best place to check.
Okay. Any other like
out.
Twitter or social handles to throw out there, or is that just the best?
Yeah, no, I mean, Radiator Comics is on Twitter and Instagram. And if anybody wants to check out the Sun and Sand comic anthology, it's Sun Sand Comic No, I'm not actually going to be able to remember the exact thing, but there are links on the Radiator Comics website to it. So.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, hopefully we can throw in some links when we post this video. So
yeah, and if folks want to join in on any of the programming that we do, like Open Studio and Cartoonist Coffee and like the Discord and stuff like that, please join us. We love seeing new faces, and we love it when people are working on their comics, because
yeah, I've yet to
I want to
join
read more comics.
I've yet to join the online studio, but that's because I'm not working on a comic right now. But when I do, you can bet that I will be there.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for watching CAKEPOPS. CAKE is a volunteer-run nonprofit organization. Your tax-deductible support is vital to our financial stability and growth. If you'd like to learn more about CAKE or consider donating, you can do so at cakechicago.com.